This is the Harmonic Motion Podcast, a place where you, dear listener, can join with automotive aftermarket professionals as they delve into and discuss the matters which matter.
Welcome to this episode of the Harmonic Motion Podcast. We're here with a group of technicians and garage owners to do a Technical Synchromesh version of the Harmonic Motion Podcast. So sit back and relax and listen to the voice from the shop floor about the matters that matter in our industry. Before we start, I'm going to let the team here that are joining in today's podcast introduce themselves. And we're going to go around the table and let the lads say a few words about what their name is, where they come from, and other salient details. So, Keith, over to you.
Evening, James. Thanks for having me. I'm Keith Lang. I'm local, as probably most of you can tell. I'm 51. I work just up the road at a place called Willtown Garage in Curry Rival. I've been doing this all of my career now. I'm here with these fine gentlemen on the Master Tech course. We're a long way through it now, really. We've only got a couple more sessions to go after this one, and then off out in the big wide world we're all going to go. And yeah, really looking forward to it.
Yeah, awesome. No, thanks for that, Keith. So you guys are here today doing, so we're partway through an ADAS module, aren't we? So
yeah,
you guys have been here today fiddling about with radars and LiDARs and all that kind of stuff.
Learning how to calibrate them and set them up.
Yeah, awesome.
That sort of thing.
Perfect. Good stuff. Right, Keith, thanks for the intro. Next up.
I'm Kevin Street. I'm originally from Cardiff. I work in Bridgend for a garage called Rent Attack.
Yeah, cool stuff. And you make the trip over here once every 6 weeks with the other lads then to come and get your fill of Master Tech training. Yeah, good stuff. Thanks for Kev. Okay, next up.
So my name's Samuel Jeffrey Milner. Originally, based in West Sussex. Work for a garage called Stedman's. Yeah, I've been doing this now since I was about 15.
Yeah,
and
good stuff.
You kind of get sucked in and you don't leave. No, so I'm really enjoying it. So obviously we're down here today doing the Master Tech course. We're going through some bits with Rob over there. Really good so far, and yeah, enjoying it. So
yeah, no, good stuff. And you've been with us. Obviously, you graduated from the Diag Tech module, didn't you, Qual?
Yeah, we did that. Did that last year, so again we had a different group of chaps, really enjoyed it. So yeah, it's nice to have that kind of ongoing development in your career, and then obviously it does spur you on when you do get back to work in order to do self-progression. And yeah, so it's good. Helps you keep abreast of all the changes that are coming, and I'm sure that's one of the subjects that's going to come up in today's discussion is about industry advances and changes and perceptions. Thanks for that, Sam. Okay, next up.
Thank you, James. Excuse me. My name's Alec. I'm from Sheffield, so I make a long commute coming down here, but it's absolutely worth it, 100% worth it. So I mainly operate as a mobile auto electrician, run a small affair. So it was originally just me and my van, but I've recently just moved into a unit, so it's all sort of making new developments. So it's a big learning curve for me. I mean, I've been in the trade since really leaving school. It's all I know. It's cars. It's always just been through my life, cars and bikes. But what keeps me engaged is sort of the advancements of the industry and sort of coming across the challenges that the modern vehicles bring to us, which is quite interesting. I do also a little bit of work for the IMI, so I'm one of the endpoint assessors. So that keeps me sort of engaged still with the apprentice training side, which I spent a short time doing as well. So it's nice to see some of the younger talent coming through, and seeing how the training's developing and supporting the new technicians coming into the industry.
Yeah, it's highly important. Obviously, with us. If we look at the average age in the room, if you look at the average age in the industry, it's an issue, isn't it? Recruitment and selection, garages finding team members, and I think that new blood and the journey and the pathway for junior technicians joining the industry is absolutely critical, and I don't think there's a big enough focus on it. So no, but well done. Yeah, cool stuff. Thanks for that, Alec. And then last but not least,
my name's Steve Kennett. 40 years old. So yeah, I've been in the industry. Like Sam said, I think I started a Saturday job when I was like 14. So yeah, I've been playing about with it since then. Done a few bits within the industry, like dealership independent. Worked in motorsport for a bit, breakdown at RAC for a bit and stuff like that. So made the bold move or stupid move, as we were talking about before, one of the two, to start my own garage. So I've been doing that for just over 2 years. So I'm still right in the thick of the beginning bit of kind of maybe I should have done that a little bit differently, and this is going well. And yeah, I've got an apprentice at the moment, so I've had him for 6 months, so that's good. You kind of some days think I can see why no one's really taking on apprentices at the minute. I haven't done for a long time because, to be fair, it's a complex job. There's a lot that can go wrong, but then saying that, I have like days where he's doing brilliantly, and I think, oh, I taught him that, and he'll come back to me like saying, oh, I've remembered that, and I've done this right, and it's kind of it's good to see him progress in his early stages. He'd already done like year 1 at college, because I thought, well, I want someone, especially if it's just me on my own, I need someone that's going to come in, hit the ground running to a certain degree, and I'm probably not far off a point now just to employ someone else, like another fully qualified mechanic, or like we were saying before, what is fully qualified, but someone really that can, is quite competent with a lot of the mechanical side of it. So it's all going in the right direction. So
that's really good, Steve. We do need that young blood, and apprentices do need a start, and we have to be kind of empathetic to our own mission and journey. And I think we often forget maybe how useless we were when we were young. I do remember getting several bollockings along the way, which helped shape my ability to do the job slightly better, forgetting stuff, and you don't realise when you're coming into it. And even I'd worked with my dad since the age of about 10, so I got a good idea, but there's still stuff you need to be helped with and coached with as you go along. And yeah, I think it's a bit of the difficult part of having an apprentice is you do have to invest time, and you've got it absolutely right. You're realising that there is an overhead to managing their expectations and their training to get them to the point where you want them to be, and that is an investment in the future. I know a lot of people that don't get on necessarily that well with trainees, almost expect them to come in and be able to do the job and then get disappointed when they can't. Well, you've almost got to realise this is actually going to put you back, first of all, until you get them coached into the way you want to do it, and then you'll start to see some payback. So
I think that's it. I think straight away I'm kind of like, if he can do a few jobs unsupervised, which he's doing now, it's kind of, like you say, it's really paying for itself,
That's the tipping point, I think, when they can do some of the stuff. Yeah, when they can be self-sufficient on a lower level, that's when you've got it sussed. Yeah. Good. And giving them, I think, in my own mind, giving people a safe space to fail in an all right way. So making it part of the journey, they're going to get stuff wrong, and making that actually reasonable and understandable, and being empathetic. Well, I can see where that went wrong. Where did you think it went wrong? What can we do better next time? And then not have it happen again. There's a whole load of driving off the tarmac onto the verge a bit to know where the verge is to get back on the tarmac. So, and understanding that is part of the job. Whereas if you're under constant pressure for them to produce stuff,
I think that safe space. I think that's really it, because it's kind of, if he's done something and broke something, I'm not, well, I set him that task, and I knew that bottom ball joint bolt was going to be pretty badly corroded. You know what I mean? Something along those lines. And you think, well, I've set him that task, so.
Yeah, and you've also got to remember that only you can remember how much effort you were putting onto that bolt before it snapped for the next time not to get to that point. So you almost have to fail to learn where the point before failure is. Because if somebody says, look, if that feels a bit loose, if that feels really tight, don't keep turning. They have to experience that snap. Right, okay. So 7 seconds before that, you probably should have stopped pulling. We'll assess that for next time. And that's where the learning really comes from, failing, that rapid failing quickly, understanding, learning, and then moving on. Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people understand that from a coaching point of view. Whatever it is, mechanical technicians or sport, whatever you're into, there is a degree of failure before success.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's quite interesting because I think if I was to be an apprentice again, it's an incredibly difficult time in the industry to come into.
Yeah, absolutely, it really is.
Yeah.
I think it's just daunting.
Yeah. Vehicles have got so complex that the expectation of a technician is now so high. And, some of the garages are struggling with the newer vehicles themselves. So to try and support an apprentice through that, it's just as hard as well.
It is, yeah. It is absolutely right. And it's one of the questions that we were going to discuss is about misconceptions. And I know from an apprenticeship point of view, if you were a young person coming into the industry, unless you've got somebody that works in the trade, if you think about their background knowledge and expectations, so yesterday I was a school kid, tomorrow I want to be a mechanic. How do you join the dots between realising actually what it is you're letting yourself in for? So, Steve, you mentioned part-time jobs, which again I did. So work experience in a place so you can sort of understand, what you don't know, but you can never really get a feel for it. I wonder, do the misconceptions of, Johnny's mum and dad are carried over to Johnny, and when he gets in here, he's blown away by the complexity or by the volume of work or by the depth of stuff you've got to be a plumber and an electrician and a mechanic. There's lots of stuff to it, isn't it? I wonder, what are the common misconceptions? Does the room have a consensus about common misconceptions people have? So if they're advising their son, daughter, niece or nephew, what do they get so far wrong? What's so toe-curlingly wrong that you hear people talk about?
I think a lot of it these days is, whereas I know I certainly got into this because I didn't do very well in school. I started in this trade and actually really enjoyed this trade. But I think now, with, like you said, the complexity of the jobs, you have to have these youngsters that are quite switched on, from the get-go, just to be able to keep up and learn these things, because there's some bloody complicated subject matters within this industry.
Yeah,
I think we need, as more senior technicians, we need to be able to make more time for these youngsters and actually explain things to them. Like, we've got one of our apprentices, Sophie, absolutely brilliant. She needs to understand the why of a job before she can do it. If she doesn't understand the why, then forget the job. It's not happening.
Yeah.
Which I think is quite a good way to learn.
Yeah, it is. I think that you make a really good point there, Kevin. People have got different styles of learning. So some people can be told what to do and they can have a bash at doing it. Other people need to be sort of shown what to do and then breaking it down into little steps and be re-coached again when they get to that point. Other people, you can say, read the manual, here are the tool sets, get as far as you can without breaking anything and give me a holler. So sometimes I don't think there's even one way to coach a young person, because as you said with Sophie, she needs to understand. Once she's got the understanding of why, you can probably set her off.
I think that's a good point, because it's learning that person as well, because I know, like my apprentice Leon, he learns in a completely different way than I learnt back in the day. I mean, I had some great mentors when I was an apprentice, and I think that served me so well, to have the guys that would spend the time with me and, teach me in a really good way and make me think about stuff. I remember one of the guys, he was kind of like, you need to know what every component is on this car. So you need to come back to me every day and tell me what that is and ask me what that is. And I'd always pick it up pretty quick. But Leon, he needs to I've got him with a notepad now. He's writing everything down as we go along. So this is how the clutch system works. I'm like, I don't really want to have to tell you that again. Obviously, I'll help you out. But so now he refers back to his book and comes to me when we've got a clutch job in, and he's like, oh, so we're doing this, this, and this, and he kind of impresses me with his knowledge that but it's his own notes, so it's helping him remember, and it's really working for him. We just found that little kind of knack. And, now all of a sudden he seems to be progressing that a little bit fast.
I mean, if I can touch on that quick, I mean, I've had experience with people at our work that do kind of depend on other technicians in that place of work to come for, okay, what should I do here? What should I do next after getting to this point? And I think it's important for them to at least try and have a go at doing it themselves first, because if you don't, you're never going to learn. And I think one of the main things there is you do have to fail in order to learn a lot of the time. And one of the main things with, especially with apprenticeships and young people coming into this trade, is that I think it's a good misconception that, or not misconception, but I think a lot of people that come into this don't particularly have the desire to learn that much. Yeah. And I think there's a really kind of fine line between finding apprentices or tradespeople that are going to come in and they want to go on training, they want to know how things work, why is it doing this, how is it doing this. I think there's just a big gap there.
It goes back to James's original question there, the misconception or what perception people have of the trade is, like you say, people are coming into the trade, right, I'm going to do this 3-year apprenticeship, I'm going to be fully qualified. And you kind of we all know, I think you even said on one of the previous podcasts, it seems to pop into my head that, even yourself running the training company and whatever else, and you're not even fully qualified, is anyone, because there'll always be something where someone will say, oh, I did this job the other day, and you're like, oh, right, I've not done one of them before. Is that how that worked? And you're like, what? You know, there's always something. So it's like, I think it's that misconception. I had a customer like last week. I said, oh, I'm not in Monday, Tuesday, so I'll have to kind of book you in later in the week. And they've said, like I said, I'm away on a training course. And they were like, training course? Like you know they're looking at me. I'm the oracle to them of their car. There's nothing I can't do on their car type thing. And they're kind of saying, well, what are you training for? As if I'm kind of branching out into a different kind of profession or something. I'm like, well, and I explained what I'm doing. They're like, oh, I never really thought about that. They kind of assumed that I probably did. The last time I did any training, I was like 19 years old, and that was that. But I think people don't realise, or a lot of people don't realise, that it's just changing. Year on year,
I think
month
a lot
on
of
month.
Common misconception is that, okay, we're just going to take our car into, I've got this engine management light that's come on. Okay, well, we're going to plug it in and it's just magically going to tell us what the problem is. And it's, obviously, it's giving you that generalised area of where you've got to look, but it's going into that deeper level. I think that's quite a common misconception as well. And
I've found there quite a few, I don't know whether it's my customers, but I feel like there's quite a few customers now that are realising, I think cars are, even to operate, people are realising their cars are more complicated. The amount of times someone's got a problem. I mean, we've done ADAS today, haven't we? But, people, have a problem with that kind of, well, I don't even use that on my car. I don't need that automatic.
Or they didn't even know they had it on there, which is, I find one, And also, you even find it when the clocks changes, people come in and they've even got absolutely no idea.
Well, that's it. And that's almost to our benefit, though, that they're making them harder for the user. So then people are coming in, they realise, well, actually, this guy's got quite a tough job. I've got this light that's coming on every now and again. I've brought the bloody thing in, and now it's not doing the problem that I told him on the phone a week ago it's been doing and infuriating me. You have customers kind of like, oh, I'm really sorry, it's not doing it at the moment. Honestly, it's been doing it. And you're like, I do believe you, because I know how unpredictable cars are. But I think, there's a slightly more better understanding from customers.
Yeah.
I felt than it has been, over the last 10, 15 years.
I think their misconceptions are changing a little bit. I think they are slowly going away from the Kevin Webster in Coronation Street type, Phil Mitchell, if you like, Grease Monkey. I think they're starting to realise now that we are dealing with something that is very complicated and, also very expensive to maintain, because it's probably the second most expensive thing that they're going to ever have next to their house, really.
Yep, it is. I've got a feeling that people being exposed to things like phones and tablets have helped them understand that this computerization of stuff is awkward and difficult, because they got stuck with a software update, or the thing won't power up and then it will, and they have issues with the technology that they're more immersed in, and they can reflect onto the car to go in, well, the car's got all this stuff in it as well. So I understand, I get stuck with my phone, tablet, computer, insert whatever technology they're messing about with, and that's all in the car. So, and I've got no idea how that works. So the cars have got, are more complicated. A couple of good points there about switching stuff off. The ADAS is one of those. It's a hot topic because we're doing it today. But people are saying, well, I don't. The lights come on because they've had an accident or a bump, and the thing needs calibrating, and they can't quite get their head around why it needs calibrating. And then you hear quite frequently, then I turn it off. So I don't really want it done. And there is a level of misconception that some of the features that stop you killing yourself and others cannot be turned on and off. They're beyond the button. They work all the time. So one of the key things would be, a steering assist. You can stop it from pulling on the steering wheel, right? But you can't stop it from not crossing the white line. Yeah. So there are levels, and I think those subtleties where people don't really understand can get in the way of some of the repair opportunities, because they sort of don't understand the car that, or the things they've got fitted on the car. But yeah, misconceptions, I think, of the industry. And I guess, Johnny and Jill, who want to come into the trade, have got parents that have got a misconception. We also got something really interesting that you said, Sam, there about being highly inquisitive, really, and the ability to continually learn. And I would say that sums it up, really, from if you're going to be an apprentice technician, you're going to join this industry, Are you driven mad by not knowing how stuff works? Did you pull your sister's radio to pieces when she was young and broke it? This is a reference. My sister beats me up continually for breaking her favourite radio. So if she's listening, sorry, Penny. But it was all worth it. Getting into that stuff, you have to be that kind of person, don't you? Because I think if you find somebody, and what flashed into my mind when you were talking there, Sam, was I've seen people come into this industry that are looking for a job. They want to do from 9 to 5 or 8 to 4 or 8 to 6, and they want to just get through the day and then go home and do their stuff, come back in the next day and do the job. And I don't know that you can do that. I worked in a dealer environment a couple of times, and there were people in there that could just get on and do servicing, doing an interim service and a full service. And do you know what? Curveball, here's an MOT. And they were happy with that kind of work. They were. It's a job. They weren't really remotely interested in getting into the complex, technical stuff. I think you have to succeed and to go further and to earn top dollar and to have a rewarding career. Probably inquisitivity and the ability to continually learn has to be almost. I'd want to know that before I knew what your grades were at school. If I throw this thing, could you get the lid off and find out what the gubbins are? Yeah, that's kind of.
I think this trade, especially for me, I went into it when I was 16. Obviously, it was 1989 when I started. The building industry had collapsed pretty much by then, so it was I wasn't forced into it, and no one sort of suggested, really. I'd always pulled my push bikes apart, I'd always pulled my motorbikes apart, and I was always interested in... I'm not a petrol head, but I was always interested in how it all worked, and, yes, I like riding them and stuff. So it kind of seemed a natural progression to come into it. Obviously, I was on the YTS, so in I went. Green as you like, £29.50 a week. I did have two exceptional guys that were my mentors. Both of them spent their entire career in the same garage. So one did 50 years and retired. The other one, I don't think he's got many more left, and he's done 50 years as well. So I couldn't have asked to have been taught by, and the boss as well, better people. But I think really you're either one of those people that have got that real mechanical inquisitiveness, or yes, there's ones that have been pushed into it and, like you say, would just, for want of a better term, be filter spinners in a dealer, or, there is the other ones that have seen Fast and the Furious and want a bit of that life as well. But for me personally, it's under my skin, it's under my fingernails, it's who I am, and I've done, obviously, not only cars. I decided after a while I want to do some different disciplines within this. So I went off and I did agricultural, I did horticultural, I've done plant, I've done lorries. End of the day, it's all nuts and bolts and spanners. Some of it's bigger, some of it's smaller. And, I think it's aided me in what I've become over the years. But I'll always say to anyone that wants to get into it, I think it's an amazing job, and it always will be for me, sort of some people you hear say to an apprentice, no, don't do it, it's a horrible job, you'll always be skint, you'll always be dirty, and depends where you work. Yeah,
that frustrates me, that when I hear technicians sort of, say to an apprentice, why on earth are you getting into this trade? Yeah. I think the motor industry is really quite a niche industry. And what I'm trying to say is that you tend to find that the majority of the technicians have an appreciation for a good car, for a good bike. Mm-hmm. I'm yet to come across a plumber that's interested in radiators.
Yeah.
It's, do you know what I mean? And it's sort of, I think because the industry sort of attracts that type of person, they think that way, that they then become, naturally good at what they can do.
Yeah.
But I think it's a shame that some people are just forced into it, like you said.
And it definitely has been a thing over the years. Who was it? Was it Peter Kay? I saw that did a thing called the thick table. He was on the thick table at school, and it was almost like that when I was at school. And me and James are similar ages. It was thick table, right motor trade.
Yeah.
But it's certainly not that now, is it? I mean, you know, the amount of knowledge. You know, I'm like, I hold things back from my apprentice. I'm kind of like, I'm not even going to go into any sort of detail about this system because I'm already like teaching him about 12 volts and 14 volts, and you know, just trying to teach him how, you know, electrical system works. I'm thinking I'm not going to blow his mind with anything more than that at the moment, because there's going to be, you know, I'm thinking I'm still learning now. I'm looking at him thinking he's like, you know, super confident when he can do like certain little jobs. You know, I got him doing a pair of shock absorbers the other day, and he basically did it on his own. Obviously, I helped him with the spring clamps because we all know about that scary side of it when you're an apprentice. You know, he thinks he's going to die. But yeah, you know, you kind of you just don't want to kind of blow their mind too much. You know, I was going to say, I'm sitting here now on a training course now, still learning and still kind of, you know, bit by bit, and he's back there, you know, 18 years old, learning. So it is literally that trade where if you've got the, you know, the nous to keep on wanting to learn, you're gonna enjoy it, because there's just endless supplies of new
challenges.
And I think
new
in this day and age with apprentices as well, I think you've more than ever now, you've really got to drum in the basics of electrical fault finding.
I think another good point to mention is where I think in this trade is where you get so many good life skills out of this. In particular, now we're talking about, you know, you're learning about how electrical systems work, how computers are working, teaches you discipline for one. You know, how many times are we reading technical documents a day? You know, we need to be able to read thoroughly, communicate as well with our customers, because we're also having to educate them as they're coming through the door.
Yeah,
especially in those times where they're coming in, they go, well, I don't know what it's doing. I've got this light coming on.
Yeah, and
could be a DPF light flagging up when they're going through the road and it's carrying out a regeneration.
Yeah,
you know,
and
they don't know that.
That's part of this Master Tech qualification, isn't it? Obviously dealing with customers, and like you say, that's a huge part of it. And that's a good point, educating customers. And I think, like, you know, I keep referring back to my apprentice, but this is such a great example, because I see him, he'll stand there, kind of, I'm chatting to a customer, and I'll go back to him afterwards and say, did you hear what I said to the customer there? You know, I'm explaining it to them. So obviously they're prepared for what's going to, you know, the answer might be at the end of this diagnosis with their car. And it's not going to be like a huge surprise for them at the end. You know, it's kind of giving them that bit of education. And then that goes back to what we were saying before about customers' perception. You know, if they're kind of dropping their car off, you get so many customers, don't you, where they're kind of like, well, what do you think the problem's going to be with it? I'm like, well, you've booked it in for this very reason. I'm going to get to the end of this diagnosis, and then I'm going to be able to tell you.
I mean, I really think a good portion of the job when a customer comes to you is just good communication. It's being able to communicate with them thoroughly as to, right, you know, what are we going to do to your car? You know, what are the steps going forward? How much is this going to cost? You know, if it's going to be a hard talk, if it's going to be a really big upsell, you know, it's going to be a big job. Let's just get that open, out of the way, done with. We can move on from that.
Yeah,
you know,
it's almost like setting your contract date with the customer.
Yeah. And I mean, even, you know, talking to front of house staff, between the technicians and front of house, that's another key bit of information that needs to happen.
Yeah.
Between you, the apprentices, that's another key bit of. So I think communication is a big part that can often fall apart in a garage setting when you're in a high stress environment. There's a lot going on very quickly. It's important to try and
definitely think long gone are the days of, you know, there was those blokes out in the workshop having a bit of banter, filling each other's pockets up with brake cleaner and all of that kind of thing. And the ones out the front, or the boss out the front, dealing with all of that and them having nothing to do with it. It was, I think they're well gone, long gone. Well, I had to go for a service appointment at Tesla the other day, and it was a completely different experience, because obviously everything's done on the app. So I booked it on the app, checked in on the app, basically told them I was on the way on the app. Then when I got there, it was the technician. I didn't see a service advisor or anything. The technician came out and dealt with me, spoke to me about what was wrong with the car, what needed doing, no problem. Went off, took my card, went to the car, came back and said, oh, do you need anything out of the car? I see you've left your vape on in the centre console. I said, no, it's fine, I don't need it, I'm going for a road test. Didn't deal with a service manager or anything, all with the tech. No paperwork or anything, everything came through on my phone. Completely different experience.
Yeah, I think
but a really enjoyable one.
I don't think you can do this role of being a master tech or predominantly doing diagnostics without speaking to customers. Now it's something you've got to do. I mean, Rob talks about it a lot, and if you start talking to them, okay, we need to try and get as much information out of you as possible. The more information you can tell me, the quicker it's going to be. More than likely, it's going to make the whole job a lot cheaper for you as well if we can get there quicker. Yeah. Well, and it does work, and I think you're never going to get away.
And
from
also,
that.
when it comes to the actual, you found what's wrong with the vehicle. Hopefully, it's ideal that you then tell the customer that, rather than because things get quite often get lost in translation. Even if you've typed it out on your tablet or your laptop or however you do your jobs. Sometimes it is better just to explain it to the customers what you've actually found.
Yeah, it's probably horses for courses on the job, on the scope of the job with the complexity. But I agree, there's a huge bit of the job that's consultation. And I wrote consultation when you were talking there because there is consultation and consulting with the client and then looking at what they say and reflecting that back and then, asking some open or closed questions to elicit more info. There's a whole heap of stuff that no doubt you do in your daily jobs that is kind of subliminal now. You don't have to think about it, but it's the way that you find works, and it is consultation, which has to be a bigger part of the job. And I think that's where the go-ahead garages win over the the less advanced. It's about that communication, clear and open comms inter-team between you, manager, front of house, and your workshop team, and then externally with the customers, with the clients, with the vehicles. That once the communication is good, I think it sets the rest of the job up very well, doesn't it? If you get that wrong, it's all a bit of a nightmare. If you get that right, it goes as well as it can. Yeah, something else that you did raise there about the thick table. Again, I think in terms of schooling, I think it's subjective about how you measure a person's capability, and I think the skill set that we need in this trade isn't necessarily benchmarked well by how well you did in your English qualification or your maths necessarily, because we're dealing with a lot of applied stuff. So the theory of going back to your apprentice there, Kev, she needs to understand the why. A lot of schooling isn't done by why. No. It's learn this, repeat it. Can you learn it? Can you ingest it? Have you got that to repeat it? You don't have to understand it. You just have to be able to give it back. Whereas I think, people that succeed and prosper in this trade are different in terms of the way that they want to get into the nuts and bolts. And theoretically, they might not be awesome. And if you're measuring everybody on the same benchmark, people are going to fail. But that benchmark doesn't necessarily dictate that they're any good in the outside world. I know people that are qualified up to the eyeballs that have got the sense of a pencil. Yeah. In the real world, we probably all do. And I know other people that have got no qualifications at all, that anything that mechanical or anything I would want somebody clever or in this with the skill set to do, they would have it over somebody that had got a load of paperwork. So I think it's one of the challenges we've got about how to select, and if people aren't academically that good, that shouldn't be the only qualification to be suggested to come into the motor industry. But the industry needs to tell the recruiters what it is we need. Yeah. So, what are we looking for? So you don't have to have an A star in maths and physics. We don't need that necessarily. But what you do, what are the characteristics? And we've kind of uncovered some of that. The characteristics of a potentially good recruit for the industry are those things, continually learning and highly, inquisitive. Those are things. Again, for me, I think, looking at there's some hand skills as well, hand-eye coordination, physical attributes about, can you blind thread and nut and bolt without really looking at it? Have you got that mechanical sympathy? And that comes from messing about with your bikes and stripping them down, about building go-karts, about once you've whacked your hand with a hammer a couple of times, you develop a good hammering technique because you're sore, your ball. So I think people maybe also lose a little bit of that in the current era where, the Xbox generation as they were, and all those synths are sucked into social media and not getting outside. I think there's, we as an industry lose a little bit practical experience of people that would go out and play and make stuff and break stuff and fix stuff up. And that probably was a rich recruiting vein for the industry, because if you're good at that, I remember it must have been the RAF. If you can fix a bike, then you can fix a. They know that from that kind of. I know it's a bit corny, but really that's the sort of the journey of people that we need in the industry. So if you can do this, then that will lead you on to doing that and the other, and really the academic side of it, although it's useful, it's not the primary goal. It has to be about the ability to mess about and fix stuff.
It's interesting you say that, James, because when I was teaching in the colleges, one of the biggest frustrations I had was that the structure that they used to get the apprentices to sit through just diluted the training so much, to the point where the apprentices might only get an hour and a half on a vehicle, which just wasn't enough time. The group sizes were far too large, and it just made sort of teaching so difficult in quite a busy environment. You have to have eyes everywhere. Yeah. You were mindful that some apprentices were there and some students were there because they wanted to be there. Some were there because they were just put onto that course. Yeah. And there was some incredible apprentices that eventually came through, and there has to be sort of on their behalf, they've got to have that want and that need and that drive to also be successful in the trade. And unfortunately, there are some out there that just expect to have it given to them. And just want to go straight onto a level 3 and then say, like you said, so you've fully qualified, right, I can go and earn lots of money now in the industry. Yeah. But, it needs to be earned.
Earn and learn.
Yeah. I think you bring an interesting point, and I thought you were going to go down. I was anticipating you saying about the structure of the training. So what has happened is the secondary schools that have failed, if you imagine the objective is to get everybody in the country up to a threshold of English and maths. Okay, so this is my big. What have the government successively done incorrectly then to really leave us a little bit exposed is, Johnny and Jill that have on a practical experience-based, mechanical course, let's say they're going to be a technician. They have to succeed in English and maths at level C before the college can gain the funding. So if the kids don't get maths and English at level C, the college is considered to have failed that student. So what you find is the 40 hours, let's say they're going for one day a week, the 8 hours that they get in that month multiplied by 4, the 32 hours in that month, that should be 31 and a half of them doing mechanical stuff. It isn't. And unfortunately, the colleges and the department for engineering that have got the apprentices have to help Johnny and Jill to get their English at level C, when you've got to say, hang on a minute, the secondary education process failed in 5 years to get that young lass or lad to level C. You've now got them on a technical training course, an apprenticeship with lots of detailed subject matter, and you're throwing the kids' success under the bus in succeeding with the mechanical side because you're beating his head against the wall to try and get this maths and English at level C because you've decided that's what's required. And actually, bugger the technical training. The goal is to get them to succeed at maths and English at level C. And, also that could be the formal mathematics, not the mathematics that you need to do the job. So the fact that they can, measure a bore and understand the difference between two data indicators.
Pythagoras' theorem.
They necessarily got to have that. And I think that's one of the big problems I see when talking to colleges, particularly, is this maths and English at level C. And there's no acceptance anywhere that the secondary education system has failed. So they should. How do you solve it? Well, you can't just put that onto the technical training departments to get that through. And I think that's one of the crazy things that makes us suffer as a trade, because if you get somebody that is inquisitive, that is mechanical, that's got that empathy, and they're being beaten up weekly about maths and English at level C, they get peed off with the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, and off they go to McDonald's.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, I think we're having discussions with all of you boys and even on the Diagtech courses about apprenticeships that have come through the colleges and stuff like that, is the training isn't tailored to them. And like you said, there are too many people on these courses, and some do slip through the net and they do really enjoy the training, but a lot of the time it can come across as bums on seats.
Yeah, it is.
And that's what they're trying to, it's just getting the numbers through the college, like you say, trying to get those numbers for grades. And it's not necessarily trying to put them through into the big world of trying to get into the trade. It puts them off, if anything.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is some of it is the colleges just getting, like you say, the numbers through to get their funding.
Yeah.
Well, we've had our apprentices telling us they've been, taking apart carburetors in college. I think, why? What is the point? Surely that time should be better teaching them like Ohm's law, because there's very little on basic electric training and the very fundamentals. Unless you've got a pretty decent grasp of how electricity works, you've got no chance at the more advanced things.
No, not unless you've got a petrol-powered calculator, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just said the right word there, Kev. Fundamentals.
Yeah.
They don't have the fundamentals of motor vehicle technology given to them anymore, or told to get it.
I think colleges could probably benefit from actually going out and talking to the trade and asking the trade what should these people be taught in the college to kind of help them get in here, and what do they need to learn.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
yes.
I think you should.
So what you'll have is a working group somewhere that has decided on a set of standards that the colleges have to deliver against, and that maybe, if they're doing carburetors, Kev, that's great. Maybe if the Holocaust hits and then we're so full of radiation that electronic control units won't work, perhaps we can limp from we can be surviving with all the cockroaches in our carburetor powered cars. But in terms of relevance, I know when I taught at the college as a young tech that was looking to get into training, and I bobbed in there, they were still doing dynamos. So that was in 1989 or 90. I did my first training first training experience, and they were still doing dynamos and 6-volt systems, and they'd all long gone by then.
Yeah.
But the syllabus was definitely lagging behind. The college guys and girls are supposed to come out to industry to keep abreast. So the Institute for Learning dictate that the college lecturers should come to industry, experience the current level of shenanigans that we're dealing with, and take that back into their job role, and then incorporate that into the training so the new people are getting relevance to technology as it goes. But unfortunately, there isn't time for the guys in the college to be able to do that. They kind of go through the motions in saying, I've been out and done this, but nobody's closing the loop. Nobody's really making sure that those colleges and those guys are keeping abreast, and that's filtering into the quality of the training. Having said that, the guys in the college are in a really difficult position with people being shepherded in their direction that have got no hope of ever maybe prospering in this industry. And they're being, as you said, some are getting mixed up with, there's good guys and bad guys and girls that are making it difficult for others. And, the college guys, I wouldn't do it. There's not enough money in the world to make me go into education and training at that level, because I think the system's broken.
Do you think some of the reason the system's broken is because of the whole them having to stay in full-time education until they're 18 or whatever it is? I'm a long time ago since I was in it, so but haven't they got to stay in now till they're 18?
Yeah, there's a thing called NEET, not in education. I forget what the terminology is now, but yeah, you can't be unemployed. You have to do something.
Yeah.
And this is really, again, where some of the benefits are geared around them going through the motions even. So it doesn't necessarily, it's what I said, some of the courses are populated with people that don't want to do anything, but they're not being allowed to do nothing.
Yeah.
So I think the thought process was, we cannot have them sat at home on their Xboxes. We need to force them to go into a classroom and ruin it for everyone else. Because
It's like,
nobody's being left behind.
I think going back to what you were saying about a lot from the trainer's point of view, the tutors at college, like they're almost not given the right backing from above them, which is interesting. Because I just keep thinking, one of the biggest bragging points of our trade from our point of view, and I hear it bandied around quite a bit, and it's perfectly true, is, it's like one of the fastest, changing industries from a technology point of view, second to like aerospace. You hear that quite a lot, don't you, within the trade. Yeah. And you're thinking, okay, well, so that's, it's a really good bragging point of our industry. And then, from a training point of view, from the new blood coming in, they're getting trained on carburetors or, old technology. I'm sure even the people training them don't want to be teaching about this. Surely, they'll be thinking, right, we should be coming up with some new material to really kind of give them the best jump start they can possibly have in the industry.
Without being controversial, but by being controversial at the same time, you'll find that it's very difficult to have enthusiasm and innovation if you're employed in a role as a trainer. There isn't a culture of dynamism and evolution within that industry. listen, we've got to get these people through that course in this set time. Here's your numbers, process these people through that course. And that's not everybody. And I do know some really enthusiastic and go ahead guys and girls that work in colleges, but it's not endemic in that environment to be go ahead, to put your head above the parapet, to try and do it different. It's not necessarily encouraged.
I mean, I've got a question for the group. Is these trainers at the college, who's going out and training these trainers? Are they seeking higher education themselves in order to pass that on to the students as well? Are they themselves going on courses? Because I don't know. So
the good ones are. So we do get a few people from colleges that come on courses that are trying to stay ahead and keep ahead, but then they're not in the majority. Many colleges, again, don't send people for training. It's one of the big frustrations that we've got as a training organisation, that we're continually learning and training ourselves on how to do this stuff. But a college won't send a person that's training others on training. The training, if you look at the training budget in a college for training the staff, there's a lot of internal training that happens.
Massively.
And passing stuff on. You've got to look at resources as well. How much does it cost to get new cars and new technology? How are they keeping abreast with that whilst they've got a full training schedule? Because you've got, in September, you have 30 people that are starting in that class, and you're timetabled for 32 weeks to have all these kids. Where is the time? There's not enough time for marking stuff. So there isn't also enough time for coming away on training necessarily. And it comes a little bit to the culture as well. They're not necessarily rewarded for being that person that is wanting to be go ahead and dynamic. What I've seen firsthand is people that are highly enthusiastic don't prosper by being so, and the status quo wants to be remained. Don't make it difficult, don't push ahead, you'll make it hard for the rest of us that are looking for an easy life. It's difficult to say that, but that's my experience personally.
Yeah, I think in a lot of in a lot of scenarios you have to be a really good role model for anyone, like tutors learning about these subjects to pass on to students, especially us in this kind of job. We're all teachers in a way that we've got to pass down our knowledge to fellow colleagues, so we've got to be that role model within that garage.
Yep.
Yeah, it's. I mean, going back to the resources, when I was in one of the colleges, the vehicles were so dilapidated that they might as well have been held together with zip ties and Velcro, because it wasn't a true reflection of remove and refit components.
No, that was the same when I went.
I remember doing they got us to do a Ford KA, take a gearbox off, and it was held on with 4 bolts.
4 bolts, yeah.
Same with cylinder heads.
Yeah, it's not preparing the students for the industry in that first instance, and then those that actually get onto the apprenticeship scheme. The college is there obviously to try and facilitate that qualification, get them through, and support them where they're needed. And the majority of training is then done on the job. And it goes down to the quality of the garages. So some of the garages are absolutely fantastic with apprentices, and they'll really, really, bring them on. They'll spend the time with them, because time is the key word. And when they're trying to rush the jobs through, the apprentice doesn't really get a look in. But then some of the manufacturer-led training programs, they're actually quite good. So it varies massively. You get independent garages that are absolutely brilliant, and you get the dealerships that are absolutely brilliant, but then you get dealerships that are really bad, and the apprentice just PDIing all day.
Yeah, I think some of them just see them as cheap labour, really.
Yeah, but I think going back a few years, you could get grants for apprentices, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. When they've obviously disappeared. I think, let's face it, in the nicest way in the world, the first-year apprentice isn't earning the garage a penny.
No.
So those grants, I thought, were quite a good thing to kind of subsidise their wages.
Yep.
While they're learning, there's less of a push then to go, right, you can now do brakes and servicing. Just get on with it. Then all of a sudden the apprentice is in the corner, or PDIs and simple tasks, not necessarily learning as they're going along, but they're making money for the garages, and the little bosses can go, he's paying his wages.
Yeah.
That'll do.
Yeah, it's a good point that Alec raised there about who's responsible for training, because we sort of had a bit of a go at the colleges there, but realising also that that there is a huge burden of training responsibility on the employer of the apprentice. But is that made clear and obvious? So when colleges are looking to place apprentices, our garage is really made aware that there's a huge burden of training that sits with the garage. So this person isn't going to come in and be useful. They're going to be a bit of a burden. They're going to be a bit of a liability. You have to spend time training them. Are you signing up for that? And that conversation doesn't happen because the college is going, we need a placement for this person. So I think the burden is under-described in order to get that placement out into industry. And then it's kind of then exposed gradually that, you as an employer have to do a lot of training with this kid. It doesn't all happen one day a week in the college. No. And I suppose, maybe being clear at the outset about whose responsibility, which part of the training is falling to whom, might work well. But it's a very interesting point about young people and coaching.
Right. But I think that's a double-edged sword for the garage as well, because the more time you put into not necessarily everyone, but the right youngsters, that's going to pay yourself back time and time again in the future.
Yeah.
Whereas if you train them just to be able to do front pads and discs and basic servicing, then that's all they're ever going to do their entire career. So there needs to be a massive investment in time just to bring these youngsters up to a level where they
succeed,
where they start to know what things are, what things do, and they can, if they want, they can go on to training courses. There's a lot of decent YouTube channels out there now.
Yeah, there are. There's no excuse not to learn. No, I agree. But there is that, suitability, I suppose, identifying the talent and nurturing them. But you're absolutely right. It is an investment. And, Stephen said, spending time with his apprentice to coach him to being highly effective is costing him in terms of time today, tomorrow and the next day. But as we go forward, that's magnified because, your young lad will be highly effective and will start to be able to do jobs that takes the pressure off, takes the burden away, starts to contribute to the running of the garage, starts to contribute financially. Whatever way you look at that journey, there are a set number of days and activities you have to do to get them there. You can choose to do it very slowly and painfully and have them struggle, or have a bit of a focus and get them there more quickly in a more reasonable amount of time. I think the ultimate time spent to get somebody good is the same whether you choose to do it poorly or whether you choose to do it well. And I think in terms of colleges and placements happening, I think it could be something to be done about setting out the expectations at the outset and having a formal training plan. Do you have as as an employer a formal training plan for your student, for your apprentice, or are you kind of doing stuff ad hocly? Because without a plan, of course, stuff tends to take a lot longer, and without a formal structure, you tend to be a bit more random in it. So I think probably there's a better joined up solution in terms of coaching and training young people whilst they're in the trade. And I know the level 1, 2 and 3 are geared around national occupational standards. So by this time you have to be able to kind of do that sort of thing. But I'm not sure even the colleges, apart from the job sheets they're giving out to the employers to witness the young person doing, is about the benchmark, about the only benchmark you get. This time we need to see him having done these jobs. But does anybody really understand the big picture about that? Or are we kind of going through the motions?
I think something as well as, I think it was definitely a bit of a thing when I did my apprenticeship, was you had the college going, we're here to tell you how it works. You're supposed to learn how to do it at work. But then work almost is going, well, you're going to college, you're supposed to learn it all at college. And there's always been almost a battle between the two.
Yeah, whose obligation is it? Is it a partnership, or do you think, is it truly a partnership, or do you think that each are expecting too much of the other? So the employer is expecting the college to do it, or the college is expecting the employer to do it?
I think it is like that, yeah. I think it's still the same today. We had an apprentice last year, was third-year apprentice, and some of the things he came to me that he said that he was doing, I was a little bit like, either, should have been doing that 2 years ago, or why are they teaching you that now before you're qualified? Some of it I felt was way too advanced.
I think
but then other stuff, it was just like, well, they haven't taught you the basics.
Yeah, there could be a better join up, couldn't there?
Yeah.
I know, like, some of the stuff my apprentice, I'm always kind of like, how did college go? And he's like, tells me about it, and he was telling me he was learning all about EV vehicles the other day. I was like, right, okay. I mean, we all need to know about it. Yeah. But on the flip side of that, exactly that. I was kind of like, I just really want you to grasp the basics before we start getting involved.
you need to understand the fundamentals of how
100%.
electricity works. Because
Yeah.
otherwise, all this high voltage stuff is over there.
Yeah.
I think the age-old question is, do we have a level of ignorance in the industry where we've sort of, there's a lot of garages now saying there's no decent techs out there, where's all the decent techs? And then we've then spent the past 10, 15 years getting apprentices to spin filters and put front discs and pads on. And is that because the garages that have invested the time? Was it because they didn't know actually how to do diagnostics and do the more involved stuff themselves? It's that age-old question. What is the actual issue within the industry?
I think it goes slightly back to what I was saying before about and I say it from a garage owner's point of view, not just from just a mechanic working with an apprentice, but do I want to, and I see why people might do it. They don't really want to risk. Well, I don't want him to do that job because that's it's got some delicate bits on it that could break and that could go wrong. And it's probably happened a few times and it's cost them a bit of money. And then it goes back to, well, they're not willing to invest into it. But like I say, the cars are a lot more complex than they used to be. So maybe that's happening more. But from my point of view, I'm willing to set him loose and give him the limitations of, right, you can do this and learn how to do that and, master that, get on to the next bit. And I'll be the one benefiting from it in the long run. But I think, maybe a bit of a mix of the cars getting a bit more complicated.
That's a really interesting point there, Steve. If the cars are more complicated, how come the training period for apprentices stays the same? So if there's more to learn and there's more complexity and there's more in depth, how can you take students through the same thing? But when we were doing it, you didn't have to do maths and English. Now I'm diluting that 3 years by saying you've got to get your maths and English, so that's going to take time away from your technical stuff. Cars have become more advanced and more complicated, so need more trade time. But are they actually getting it? And the answer is kind of obvious, isn't it? If you're spending time doing other stuff and you haven't changed the technology focus of your apprenticeship and it's not really taking into account some of the complex nature of the cars, how can we expect it to succeed, to deliver qualified or apprentices that are qualified to a standard they can land in a garage and be competent at service maintenance?
And I guess they don't get the option now to carry on like I did. I did 3 years, then I had the option to do a fourth year, which was more technical, with a lot more electronics and diagnostics and such like. And then there was I think it was the fifth year, was the IMI sort of management course and things, which my boss wouldn't send me on. But the other one I did, and I don't think I would be doing what I do now if I hadn't got to that level to start with.
Yeah.
It's interesting because when I've I've not done loads with the endpoint assessment. I've done little bits, but I've read into small points, and these. My understanding is that there's some trailblazer groups, and there's these representatives that have spoken with like the dealerships, the larger companies, the fast fit centres, in order to try and develop the qualification to reflect what the industry needs. Now, for me, the industry is the independent garage sector. That's the strongest part of the industry. It's the bread and butter of the industry. And just taking the advice and guidance of what the dealerships and the fast fit centres need isn't a true reflection of what the industry
because
as a whole
in there a fast fit course, I think, in there.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the dealers, I know certainly a lot of the dealers are owned by us, and they've all kind of got the same format. They've got one guy who knows what he's doing, or a master tech, or just someone who generally knows what they're doing. And then you've got 7 or 8 people spinning filters all day.
Yeah.
And that's most dealers.
The structure of the teams, So you've got one super tech and then several service and maintenance guys. Yeah, I think again that model is kind of the way it is in independence, isn't it? You generally get 1 or 2 guys that are the go-to guys, and then other people have got their natural talents, I suppose, haven't you? You've got guys that want to do gearboxes and clutches, and got some guys that want to do timing belts and timing chains, other guys that only want to do servicing, and crazy people that want to get into the complex fault finding. But you've got streams of people, I think, and there are job roles in garages that can, I think you have to have a mix of talent. It's a bit like a sports team. You can't have 11 strikers or 11 defenders or 11 goalies. You've got to have a mix of capability. So I think that's a fair comment. And that streaming tends to happen a bit as we go on, doesn't it? You find a natural bent that you're particularly good at doing, or you enjoy doing it, or you really don't enjoy doing other stuff. So people tend to shy away if they're not into the complex. The electricity is one of those that sorts the men from the boys, isn't it? Not interested in doing diag because I don't understand electricity, and don't give me diag work, but I will do clutches and cam belts and engines and cylinder heads. And I think that streaming happens naturally. And it is probably a good thing.
It's one of the beauties of the job, though, of the industry, is like you say, there's so many different like little cliques within it, and that's the dream workshop, from a managerial point of view, to have people that you can slot into, like someone like you say loves doing brake pipes and wheel bearings and exhaust, and another guy that loves doing the timer belts and the clutches, and then you've got your diagnostic.
Likes doing brake pipes.
I think there are a lot of people that would rather that than an electrical fault.
Yeah, and that's it. And you're saying it from your point of view, and it is that.
I'd rather do brake pipes than Citroen hydroelastic suspension pipes.
Yeah, no, it's true. And that is the dream team. Is the team? There's a thing called synergy. So in teams, synergy really comes to the fore. That if you've got 5 people in a garage, the synergy, the team ethos is you're more powerful as 5 team members than you are as 5 individuals, and synergistic gains come from you streaming the work that people like. So give the gearboxes to the gearbox guy, give the clutches to the clutch guy, give the diagnostics to the diagnostic guy.
Yeah.
Don't try and make somebody that doesn't want to do it, because the synergy flips on its head. If you give somebody work they don't like to do, they're very slow and they're not engaged and they don't really have that will to win. So yeah, you're absolutely right. So I think that team roles within a garage, if you're looking at your goals to develop the business, you have to try and think about what it is you're looking for from the person that you're employing. I don't know that we've got that luxury. If we look at the recruitment crisis that currently exists, drives around the twist or makes me laugh out loud. I sit on between either of those extremes. I look at job adverts now, and the money is getting to be a reasonable level in most of the adverts you're seeing, but you're starting to see fully trained, got to do MOTs, got to be good at diagnostics, got to be able to do timing belts and cam belts. And actually, what you're saying in that advert is you're trying to find a superhero because you're paying strong money. You want somebody to be able to do everything. And I don't know about you guys and your experience of the trade. I could probably count on 2 hands the people I know that are good at everything, that you could say, oh, that bloke would fill that role. He could do MOTs, he can do clutches and timing belts, and he can do wheel bearings and the servicing, and he's also awesome at diag, and he can do all. But that's probably 0.1% of the technician population that fit most of the job roles that you see advertised.
Yeah, it's a unicorn, isn't it, really?
Yeah. It is,
and it's impossible in reality, because if you've got that one guy who's stripping down an engine at the time, well, he can't be doing timing belt and diagnostic work at the same time he's got the head off that and the gearbox off that.
Well, that's what you, isn't it? Yeah, that's what you do, Kev.
I think it is.
It's your job role, isn't it?
I would say it's important that, when we do find these apprentices that do come through into the garages that are keen and they're willing to learn and they've got that passion and that drive, it's to really try and facilitate that, because you can really push them from the start of that to being what you want them to be in your workplace. To add to that synergy of that group is very important for the business itself, as well as everybody in that place.
I think, and pushing them like that, it makes them want to be the best they can be as well.
Yeah.
Is there a pathway? If you're building a team, there's obviously a gap or a slot for somebody to come in and do it. So are garages recruiting proactively for the gaps that they've got, or are they kind of looking for anyone? And I put this job advert out there that's got the shopping list of skills you must have, and we're hoping anyone will turn up. I don't know what the rationale
that
is.
Could be, and that you think of it from you're desperate to kind of move to somewhere different. You're not enjoying your job, but you're not very good at diagnostics or whatever, or you hate doing clutches and cam belts, and you look at that advert and you're like, well, that's good money. Oh, well, actually, no, I don't really fancy it, because they want me to be able to do everything. And actually, is that garage owner, do they need all those different, attributes, or are they just kind of like you say, they're just kind of like, right, I've got this amount of money, and if I can get someone to do all those jobs. But it's like, so I think that, there are, it's one of those kind of jobs where there's different factors to what you can do and what your speciality is, and it's a bit staying in your lane as a technician, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a service technician, a diagnostic technician. Like I say, I mean, that one of the best workshops I've worked in and ended up running for a while did have that balance. We had like 5 guys in there, and it was pretty much what I reeled off before. You had one diagnostic guy, one who just loved getting dirty, one who loved doing cam belts and clutches, and then a couple of other guys that would just be happy servicing all day. And I tell you what, it was a slick operation. Everyone was happy. Plenty of there's always banter flying around everywhere. But do you know what I mean? It really kind of like feeling. Yeah, it was a really good feeling, and it's it's getting someone to slot into that place nicely. Don't necessarily need to be everything.
No, so we could say then, if you're looking to recruit a technician, focus on what it is that you really want, not maybe think about the shopping list of, I need somebody to do all of this. And I know I've heard tales of garages not understanding how they've got somebody in for an interview, and Billy or Johnny's working in the dealer, the independent garage is offering more money, makes the offer, and they don't accept. And one of the reasons they don't accept is because of the shopping list of expectations. And you go, and maybe the expectation is you're coming from the dealer, so you're going to be super good at that. Guys that work in dealers are freaked out by having to work on all brands in the independent workshop.
Absolutely, aren't they?
So recruiting somebody from a dealer is you've got to give them therapy about working on all brands. So that guy or girl can come to your business, but they're going to have a transition period, and you're going to have to treat them with kid gloves about transitioning out of single brand into multi-brand, and all of the problems that brings with it, the challenges. You have to accept that. And I think that's one of the things that I don't see happening in the conversations where I offer this guy this money from the dealer and he wouldn't come on. I know I've offered him more than he was getting. Yeah, but your expectations are wrong, and you've made no provision about managing his transition from BMW to everything, or the brands that you do. So yeah, shopping list, I suppose, and transitioning from one job role to the other, because whatever you're in, we must speak as employees ourselves, of being employed. You've got to feel comfortable in the job. You've got to feel that you fit into the business and that you're adding value. And somebody coming in that's got a big challenge in their expectations, I'm coming from a brand to all brands, I'm freaking out here, is going to feel very exposed moving jobs, aren't they? And I don't think there's any...
Yeah, if you give them, on their first day, they've been working on new Golfs and Passats for the last 5-10 years, and you give them a 20-year-old Defender to do a clutch.
That's going to break something.
You're going to struggle.
That's a bit like that in the jungle. You have to eat a witchetty grub. So I'm putting you in front of the old Defender. You have to eat that before you go on to the next.
Yeah, we're at that time in the industry where I think the technician, they need to understand obviously the limitations, but really decide on a bit of a specialism now. It's like you said, you've got the techs that are amazing, the mechanical stuff, and then you've got your diagnostics and your electrics. I mean, if someone gave me a turbo to do, it'll probably take me about 4 days now. But to look at a network fault, I'd like to think I'd be pretty proficient at it. Yeah. But the industry's massive now. We've got the auto locksmiths that they're probably like the bravest of the brave, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Then people that are confident with the clutches. I know people that can do clutches in an hour and a half. You think, how the hell do they can do that? It's unreal. But then they might look at me in the same way and go, how the hell did you just diagnose that?
Yeah. How did you even think to find?
It's an interesting point though, like you say, because you're out and about on the road, and now you've got your workshop obviously, but diagnostic tech, but even the mappers, and there's so many different factors to the industry of different kind of little sectors and little niches.
So many little sectors now.
Like you say, it's a good time, a hell of a time to be in the trade, because we've got so many options and so much going on. But a bit like what James just said, it also can be quite scary, because you're like, well, I've got to know all of this. Yeah. I've got to know everything about everything. You speak to some of the guys mapping, or like you say, locksmiths, and they're kind of telling you some of the bits and bobs. Like, how'd you go about that? You're like, I didn't know that. And then you're thinking, oh, wait there, my knowledge is a bit down here. But actually, you can't know everything about everything. So that's kind of like you say, picking your lane a little bit, or if you're building a workshop or whatever, picking each guy to fill that kind of gap in the workshop.
Yeah, I think going on as part of that synergy in that group as well, I think it is a relation between your employer and your employee themselves about saying, you know, as an employee, making it, you know, obvious about what you want to be doing.
Yeah.
Like when I came to work at the garage I'm at, I came in with the mindset of saying, right, I want to work for you, but this is what I want to be doing. I want to be doing the diagnostics, but I want to be sent on training as well.
Yeah.
So do we need to talk to the rest of the team that we work with to saying, what jobs are you happy with doing? Do you just want to do the big clutch jobs?
And
do you just want to do servicing? Do you just want to do MOT? And then you can kind of facilitate around that.
Goes full circle of what we were saying before about communication,
yeah,
like what you were saying.
And
you know,
what you need to bring into that business.
If you've got a good manager, a good workshop foreman, a good boss that's kind of saying, well, you know, I know that's going to annoy him if he's going to be doing a cam belt today when actually I've got that diagnostic job. You know, it's really just having a good manager, good communication as well.
Because it could be that we're going into this where we need to be a bit more open-minded, and maybe we are giving people jobs that they don't particularly want to do because we don't know what they want to do. So maybe we need to have that kind of discussion within the business or within the trade itself as to we just need to be quite obvious with what we intend on doing.
Getting the best out of people, isn't it? You know, like you can use the analogy of like football or any sport kind of thing. You know, playing someone in the wrong position, one, they're not going to enjoy it. Two, they're not going to be as good. You know,
like me personally, I wouldn't have any. I don't enjoy doing servicing or MOTs. It's zombie work. We're not honest to me anyway. I would rather engage my brain, and I want to be thinking about things.
Yeah,
keeping myself busy, but. You know, there's nothing wrong with doing the servicing or the MOTs. You know, loads of guys are happy with coming in at 8 in the morning, leaving at 5, just doing MOTs because that's what they want to do, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
Yeah.
It's just down to you as an individual for you know what you want to do, I think.
And you're right, communicating that within the business and having the management team, you know, that are streaming jobs or they're taking work on, know that they're finding work, the right kind of work for the right kind of people, and that takes into the bigger discussion about the general repair garage, when to say no or what to say yes to, and that partly is about the streaming the jobs. That's partly about fitting in with the capabilities of the garage in terms of, I'm going to say, tools, equipment and resources, but also to the guys and girls that work there about the kind of work they want to do. So, you know, does there have to be some kind of bigger discussion about what is it as an enterprise that we're actually doing? Are we focusing on service and maintenance? Are we going to take on a BMW M5 with a spun bottom end, Kev? No names, no patrols, but you know, is that the kind of work that we want to do? Or you could flip it on its head and go, yeah, actually, we like to do that kind of work because it keeps, you know, Kev engaged, and it's really what drives him on, and he feels valued at work, and he wants to come to work to do that because it is complicated and different. You know, is a communication up the chain, up the value chain, or up the management chain to go, yeah, this is the kind of stuff we need to do. There's finding a way of making it pay. There's finding a way of, you know, finding those customers that need that type of work, and it goes into the bigger discussion about, you know, is the era of the independent all makes garage limited to what you can do, or is the future specialism in a single brand, or can we still be sort of most things to most people on most cars?
I think you've got to still specialise. You can specialise, not necessarily to one brand, but you could specialise in one sector, but still be multi-brand.
Yeah. So you're being the specialist generalist, so we can do all your diag on all your brands, but could you be a general garage that does everything on all brands? So we can do your key programming and your module replacement and your service and maintenance. You know, where does the clever or the smart garage know where to sort of limit their exposure or limit their ability to take on jobs? How do you stop yourself from taking a job on the garage? The technicians in the workshop will be shaking their head when it rolls up in the car park. What on earth did you do booking that in? How's that communication missing with the slightly the people that are in charge of that type of work? Back to communication, really. So as much as the garage business is finding work for the technicians, can they help the garage business in understand what work they should be doing? Is there a communication in both directions?
I think that, especially when we've all had those jobs come in, you think, oh God, that's going to be a whatever. And it turns out, oh no, it was just a bulb.
Yeah.
I think that decision needs to be made sort of after our initial diagnostic of the vehicle. and then move on from there. You know, it's whatever brand, A1C, control unit. Do we have the equipment to do it? Yes. Then great, we'll do it. No. Sorry, mate, it's this.
I think
help
that's
you.
it, isn't it? It's having that point before you get to the point of no return, where you've kind of like you're
knowing where to
balls
stop.
deep in the job, and you know you've kind of maybe, you know, sometimes it could be to the point a component's been changed. Right, okay, right. There's still something going on here. We've still got weirdness going on. We've still got you know, it might have helped with something, but the engine light's still coming on. You're in deep, you know, you're committed to the job. So it's almost kind of, it's having that kind of point, like you say, and that's a good point, like initial kind of, right, we'll take it in, we'll have a look. This, you know, we'll be honest, it's, you know, whatever brand, we haven't got necessarily the dealer equipment on it, but we certainly have a look and see how we get on. And then it's getting to that point of, this is going to be a bit deeper. Like you say, we might need to code something in. We haven't got the equipment for that. Right. At that point there, let's just, you know, we've given them an initial diagnosis. It's something to do with engine management, you know, ECU or whatever.
Can you program the key on my whatever car? Got a bit of equipment that might do it. No, let's stop there rather than trying that bit of equipment that might do it and end up with a car
Doesn't
that's
start.
not running.
Yeah, I think there is a line between, you know, wanting to do it and just wanting to be the hero. If you see what I mean. I've been there and done it, and you know, didn't end well.
Yep. It's a lot of stress, isn't there, in that?
Hell of a lot of stress.
I think there's multiple factors to kind of take into that kind of decision about whether you specialise in certain vehicle makes and, you know, subgenres of what you want. Did you just want to be involved in module programming or servicing or mechanical repairs diag? It's, in my opinion, maybe it's better off looking at the business. Okay, supply and demand, what makes are we seeing the most of that we're making the most money on? You know, are the guys proficient in doing that kind of work? Are they enjoying that kind of work?
Yep.
And then kind of going from there. Because obviously at the end of the day, you need to hit bottom line. You need to make the money to keep the business alive. But I think there's a line you need to draw there on
Am I right
satisfaction
in
as well.
saying we all do all makes and models?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's some things I'll say no.
Yeah, but within reason, we all do all makes and models, don't we? And so we're all taking on big diagnostic jobs, aren't we? All of us here. So it's kind of think, well, how many times do we are coming unstuck on what we're taking on and what we're doing?
Yeah, I think.
I mean, it's easy for me because I take on my own work, so it's kind of.
We've kind of got older and wiser, really. If it looks like it's going to be an absolute nightmare, or we won't get that far into it now before we go. No, we don't.
But it's knowing that point. I mean, that's the wiseness of the point of no return.
So how about the
isn't it?
concept of triage? So like the A&E people do, you rock up to A&E and they assess you. So the communication starts with, you know, get yourself here. We don't undertake to fix you, but what we're going to do is assess you and then make a decision whether there's something we can do, or if there is, again, what sort of stream or next action is going to happen. And I think the D word, the diag, the booking it in for a quick look or the plug-in, is kind of used in that way. But I get the feeling that a lot of garages could prosper by having the ability to triage and assess a vehicle for a set fee, to decide whether or not it's something that they should do, to give the client the evidence of what it is they found, but actually it's a no from us. You need to take. I don't think it's formally built into a lot of garage businesses when it should be. So the ability to triage your good customer's problem to see if it's something you can succeed in, that's the first thing that I don't think happens. The second thing I don't think happens is the job review. So you get one that kicked your ass. Where was the review, the formal review that took place, to work out why it kicked your ass, and then how to avoid that happening again? So, you know, there isn't widespread reviews this month. Let's look at the top good jobs and the top bad jobs and work out the strategy for the following month based on that history. I think people in garages are keen to forget the jobs that burned them and to go blindly into another batch of jobs. So I think triage is one thing I would really encourage garages to have the voyage of discovery with their client. We are going to triage this. There's no commitment to fix it. There will be this amount of money for that kind of investigation, and we'll give you our report and make a next course of action. But job reviews.
I think we've all taken away a diagnostic assessment from the course, haven't we? and
Yeah.
implemented it
Yeah.
to where we work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now,
I think that's a good idea, though, about kind of looking over the jobs that, like you say, have kicked your butt down into the dirt and kind of seeing why it's done that. And going back to the previous point is, okay, if you know that job is going to kick you down again, maybe we steer away from that kind of work and go towards something that we know that we can do.
Yeah. So have your front, does your front of house, or do you have red jobs, amber jobs, and green jobs? You know, do you, like you have with your clients? You know, we talk about that here: the red, amber, and green for the client, the red, amber, green for the car. That assessment ability before you get stuck in there. How you work out what the red jobs are by reviewing the ones that spanked your ass. They are classified as a red job. We don't want to see any of them in here, please. But I don't think we get the garage industry get time to do the review, because again, next it's going to be the MOT rush, and then it's going to be air conditioning season, then it's going to be winter servicing, whatever it is. But I think the strategy for garages employing a bit of planning proactively to look at, you know, the experience. What did the Chinese say? You know, the wise man learns by his mistakes, and the Japanese say the wiser man learns by somebody else's. You know, there is the ability to do the review and to maybe change tact in the job by doing the review. And I would think there's a lot to be learned by the positives, the wins, and also the losses.
What I come across is when I get the phone call to go and have a look at a car for a garage. They've had the car for a week, for example. They're £300 deep in parts, and I sometimes ask them, why have you taken this on? What was the motivating factor behind it? And one of the things that always tends to crop up is, this customer's a good customer. We've looked after their cars for 15 years. You know, the dad, the mum, the brother, the sister, you know. So they sort of feel compelled to try their best with the vehicle. And that's sort of, I think, one of the things that tends to jade that vision of triage, putting all that out of the way is, we'll have a quick look, and then that goes south pretty quickly.
Because they don't know when to stop. They don't know when to stop. I understand. I get the motivation behind you looking after your great customer, but I would venture to suggest you'd be better off looking after your client by hiring in an expert. If you rocked up to your doctor with a brain aneurysm, you wouldn't expect them to have a bash because they know you for 15 years. You'd want them to call the ambulance and get you in front of the brain surgeon, wouldn't you? And this is why I think garages tend not to feel comfortable streaming the work or streaming the problem. They feel that obligation to look after their client, which is absolutely the right thing to do. But in that case, you're not the best person to see that problem through. And if they called you before they spent the money on the bits, they would be offering a better service to their client. And you know, I think that's where garages find it difficult. What I was pushing towards, garages find it difficult to say no. You know, the look on the people's surprised faces when we talk about, you don't have to take on any job at all. You can choose politely to decline that work. Really? The doors are open and people are coming, but you can choose who you let in, because if it's not for you and you're not going to succeed and you're going to end up annoying the client and not doing a great job, better off not to have seen that job than to get it in and fail miserably and have a one-star Google review. You know, it's your shortcut. You're predicting the future a little bit. Hang on a minute, by not, accepting or choosing not to do it. And that's where we talk a little bit about the team strengths and the garage's strengths and what kind of work you're trying to do. If you know that up front and you've got a bit of a plan, it's really easy to probably avoid BMW engines with the bottom end hanging out. If you didn't want to do that's what works.
Just applying for punishment.
But it's good. It's good work. Yeah. No, that's really quite interesting. Yeah. So maybe analysing the losses and the wins, and then helping that shape your future. But the triage, I know we push that quite hard here on the Diag particularly. But all of the jobs, especially with an unknown client, potentially can be challenging to do.
I think in that triage as well, you might find that we failed that this didn't work out well because we didn't have this piece of equipment.
Yeah.
That piece of equipment might not be that expensive.
Yeah.
We certainly get that, and the next one is going to go a lot better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where the loss and the win analysis, why did that job not go particularly well? Because we didn't know we needed a torque multiplier for the bottom, the bottom pulley. Now we do. We're comfortable to take more of that job. So in that case, the fail review would have showed it was an equipment job that you've now got, so those future jobs aren't going to be difficult. Yeah, it's a bit of a virtuous circle of review and refinement.
I mean, we talk a lot about retail customers, but what are your guys' experiences for doing work for other garages?
We don't.
Just a blanket, no.
No,
right.
we do a bit, not a massive amount.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's more it'll be one of the other garages where they don't really want to get involved in something diagnostically, and they've probably been quite wise with what they've done. There's a couple of garages nearby to me, and they're just really much fast fit, stay in their lane, and I do well off the back of that, really. Right. So it'll be customers, they've kind of said to come over. So normally if they say, oh, so and so's recommended you, I'm normally like, okay, well, it's probably going to be something a bit bigger, but at that point there, that's good work for me, really. But as regards something that I don't get too involved in, I've got something that another garage has stripped down already, and it's kind of, I think there was one a while back which I don't even know how they got it so wrong, but they'd replaced a load of parts on it. It turned out the cam belt had stripped a few teeth on it, and it was kind of within, I don't know, 15 minutes, you kind of like, right, okay, that's that. And you kind of think, how they replaced the crank sensor, they replaced this, that, and the other, which, we've all seen happen. Yeah. But, sometimes it can be good getting that job. But if someone's stripped a lot of stuff down, you kind of like, you don't really know what they have or haven't done. So that's a red flag in itself, isn't it? Really,
from the point of view, like the first jobs that are recommended to you, where you are with them. They may have done a code read on it, say, and gone, right, no, we don't want to get involved with this. We'll send that, and it comes straight to you, and that's a lot better than they've emptied the parts cannon on it with sub-quality bits and still haven't fixed it, and probably put more faults in than originally had.
Yeah, that's difficult, isn't it? The badly done jobs where, clients now behind the curve on parts and expectations. They are jobs, like almost like you said there, Alec, about the 15-year. That's a long-standing customer. They try to do their best for them, but they've actually ended up making it difficult and problematic. I think that's again where the review process, sort of, that garage should stop and take a bit of a look and say, we don't want to be in that situation. But in my experience, when I used to do a lot of trade work, we would get the kind of repeat offenders that all the client cars that are coming from them were like that. So they'd always get to that point and then throw their hands up. And there was no persuading them there was a different way of doing it, because they must have been winning on some, but they were losing on a lot of others. So that's really tricky. One of the questions I wanted to float to the group was about emerging trends. So in the industry, the things are changing. We hear about, Stephen, you mentioned that about, the advance in technology is probably one of the fastest, probably behind computing, I would think. But in the transport world, we're seeing lots of new stuff. What do you guys think about emerging technology, stuff that's coming, and what challenges do you think we as an industry face with those emerging technologies?
Scary. Yeah. I think you just got to be really switched on. I think us as a collective, we really need to push further training. You really got to have that self-drive in order to go do that. As well as probably, I'm not a business owner myself. I'm lucky enough that I get sent to these courses, so I'm very privileged and I appreciate it. But also reinvestment maybe back into the business, because I think we see a lot of garages who aren't going on the training. I think everyone knows a garage maybe that isn't pushing out that training or that reinvestment into jobs that they're seeing, and that's why they're slowing down in this kind of advancement in technology.
I also know a lot of guys, I think we quite a few of us do, or garages that guys aren't interested in training. No, that don't want to go on it.
No.
I think we're on the cusp of a huge kind of hinge, aren't we, of the industry of, I think what did they say, diesel sales last year, new car diesel sales 9%. So I mean, the majority of stuff we're working on at the moment, or certainly 50%, is diesel, isn't it, at the moment? What we're working on in our workshop, certainly with me. And that's and that's going to go to what, direct injection petrol. EV, hybrid. Yeah. So you think, well, okay, in 6, 7, 8 years time, what are our workshops going to be full of? That's going to be those vehicles. So then you're thinking, right, okay, well, I don't know what the percentage will be of EV and hybrid, but we've really got to be ready for that. And then everyone's going, well, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. Well, it is happening, and it's going to be, like I say, diesels are gone, EV, hybrid coming in, petrol engines obviously have changed a bit, but we're going to get was it GPFs and stuff, and
I think
a lot more of that technology on petrols.
We've already got them. We had the GPF fault on last week.
Yeah, so there you go.
It's been out longer than you think.
So I mean, it's like you say, all of a sudden we've got a lot of new technologies coming in, and a lot of stuff we need to brush up on. So I think it's just being ready for that coming in. Which obviously that's brilliant for us, because that's part of this Master Tech course with EV and stuff. But
we're quite lucky actually coming here, because we're doing the training on the stuff coming up. It's been fun.
Got a clue.
I think also as a technician and maybe as a business owner, is you've got to look into the you've got to have that 5-10 year plan going forward about. There's some garages out there that are specialising in just EV, and they're doing really, really well. Whereas some other garages that they either don't have the facility to do that, or they're just kind of not interested because they haven't learned about it. So I think you also need to have that kind of discussion within yourself about, do I just want to focus on hybrid? Do I just want to focus on petrol and diesel, electric? It's kind of getting to that point as well.
Trying to work out where, as a business, where you would think to invest, because there's two big sectors of the industry that's it's going to go quite busy. You've got the EV side, and then you've also got the ADAS side.
So it goes back, do you need to specialise?
Yeah. Which way do you go with it?
But then you've got a lot of people talking hydrogen as well. So is that going to sneak up on us?
But how many years is that going to be in our car parks? As an independent, I don't think we're not ready for. We're not at that point. So
I'd say with hydrogen, I think our time to start looking at it is when we see hydrogen filling stations.
Yeah,
because until they happen, the cars can't.
Yeah, you're looking what's coming through as the new car sales, and that's kind of what I've kind of been doing a little bit more recently, kind of thinking, well, which direction it's going. And I don't think anyone knows. I mean, James, you're one of the brains in the industry. It's like, I think I've heard you say you're not entirely sure, and it is anyone, and for obvious reasons, because we don't. It's not. I don't think the manufacturers know, do they?
Trying to predict the future is difficult. I think one of the underlying drivers of change is political will and desire, and what we've seen recently is the political drive to rid the industry, or rid the world of internal combustion engines, which some of it's been dealt with in a kind of crackpot way, where we're going to ban them by 2030, yet we don't have the technology or the infrastructure in place to support the widespread implementation of an alternatively fuel vehicle. I think a bit like diesels. So if I look at the first big balls up the governments across the world made, it was when we victimised petrol engines as being high carbon emitting devices, and we penalised the car owner through taxation to get them to change from a petrol to a diesel. And lo and behold, as we started going through diesel transition, then we found out all of a sudden that they were emitting huge amounts of particulate matter and probably an equal amount of carbon in their use and operation, and the world then has gone against diesel, and we're finding ourselves lumped into EV as the new way forward. But I think it's continual, I suppose, focus in maybe not the right areas, or the right areas but implementing it terribly badly. Yeah, so I think EV is definitely more particularly hybridization. Full electric vehicles, I think the jury's still out. Hybridization is nice for us as a garage industry because it contains a complexity of both. So you've got your petrol engine and the EV side, motor generators, inverters, converters and batteries. And, to see the industry prosper, hybrid is going to be pretty awesome. I think, predictably it's going to be petrol engined hybrids, and then we'll probably move towards the hydrogen hybrid in some way, shape or form, whether that's hydrogen internal combustion supporting a hydrogen fuel cell driving it like an EV. That seems the least crackpot way of doing it at the minute. But yeah, I think electrification and robotification, so what we're doing today, ADAS, self-driving, cameras, LiDARs, and that type of thing, are drive forward. But I think the legislation's what's driving it. So I think we as an industry keep an eye out on what's happening in terms of legislation, and we'll see that coming. I think the demise of diesel is still underestimated by a lot of people. I look to Europe and see what they've done with particle counters. Holland went with particle counters, as did Austria, I think, or one of those, Belgium. in this January will be the second anniversary of Germany going with particle counters on diesels in the MOT, and the UK government or the UK industry, the UK, let's say legislature, still don't have a firm view on whether we're going to see particle counting as part of the MOT. So going away from opacity or the smoke density into physical measuring of particles, because that will be the day the diesels really start to die off, with DPF deletes and EGR deletes and all this other stuff that's been going on that hasn't been addressed. You tell me it has been addressed and I'll tell you it absolutely hasn't. That will be the big change. Diesel will demise almost overnight. Diesels will be like Allegros. You know, you'll go, oh, do you remember them? Yeah, and it will be a bit like that. So, but I think, and all those will be replaced by some form of scheme, be it scrappage or some other inducement into hybrid electric vehicles. And that, I think, was the master plan, the European project to get the European public away out of their diesels and into EVs, is all centering around particle counting and emissions. And I think we're seeing the execution of that plan. So, yeah, what you guys are doing here on the training, we designed the course kind of anticipating what was happening in the industry. So we feel that we're setting you guys up well to deal with that. But I think that's probably hybridization. And the other big thing, I suppose, is the computing technology. So domain body controls, we're moving away from CAN and into Ethernet in the connected vehicle, over-the-air updates and this type of thing. I'm not quite sure on the impact, particularly fault finding is difficult and a challenge for those type of cars. It makes the scan tool life a bit easier because the cars are talking proper, internet protocol. We're not cobbling together some half-arsed CAN bus that should have died in 1980. We are actually going full Ethernet, and that gives us the ability to plug Ethernet, plugging the car directly into your server at work and connecting without all of these kippy interfaces, that the dealers, the main, the brands get us to buy and using their software. So I think that will get a bit easier. But I think that's probably for us, hydrogen's longer term project. Whether that will succeed or not, I really don't know. As you guys know, I've been along that track of training and getting into it. We've had several hydrogen cars here, and we worked on projects to develop training. We've been around the world getting hydrogen training. Realistically, yeah, it's too far. It's the future scope. We have to be mindful of it, but I wouldn't be going out to generate, to buy my hydrogen charge point to stick in front of my house just yet. We'll wait to see how that happens.
Yeah, I think that your natural demographic of where you live is going to dictate sort of what vehicles you're going to see. So particularly where I live, there's a lot of diesel vehicles, and when I've driven some of the electric vehicles and the hybrid vehicles in and around Sheffield, I personally found that because it's such a hilly area, a lot of the vehicles have struggled with the range, etc. But then the other sort of extrinsic factor that's going to dictate what people are going to buy is the affordability of these vehicles. Yeah. We're starting to see already like the second-hand car market that, we were talking earlier about a replacement engine for a Corsa. It's just like, it's gone astronomical.
Yeah, it's gone mad. But I think as well with them, what a lot of people in government don't realise is that the people driving around in 10-year-old, 10, 15-year-old cars don't do that because they want to pollute the planet. They do that because they can't afford a brand new car.
Yeah, I think possibly the future of car ownership may change exponentially in the next 10 years or so, in the fact of people won't actually own cars. No. They'll be leased or
I think you look at a lot of things today when people go out and they purchase goods, is a lot of it is now down on finance. A lot of it is on the credit cards because you use somebody else's money while you use yours.
Exactly.
But so I've heard people talk about that as well, Keith, that it's probably going to go more PCP lease based.
Yeah.
You're going to be paying a monthly subscription for your cars, as well as on demand services with a lot of the German cars. You want heated seats, they're already installed, you got to pay for them. You want LED lighting, pay for it. Monthly subscription.
And if you look at a lot of these modern cars now, we see some horrendously expensive components that we replace, whether it be control units, engines, or what have you. You really want to buy a nearly 10-year-old car, a second-hand car with all of those bits on? you know.
Yeah,
Not really.
It's really interesting, and I think we had a conversation before, Keith, about technology being the new rust.
Yeah.
You know, with essentially, you know, if you look at a modern car, the infotainment system that sits in the middle of the dash, that everything goes through. So heating, lighting, you know, radio, navigation is all in one central unit, and when that goes bang, your car could be in for a 6, 7, 8,000 quid bill on a 10-year-old car. I think the latent liability that exists in some used cars, if we think about just even petrol and diesel, it centres around infotainment and that type of thing. When you look at electrification, then people are freaking out about the cost of replacing batteries. Again, not a common issue, but there is a latent liability for on costs of a 10-year-old EV. Certainly has got high liability where... And probably a little bit of challenge of knowing the condition of that when you're buying it. If you've been into petrols and diesels, you can do an assessment on a petrol or diesel and look at the engine and go, it's breathing a bit heavy, it's failing on a compression test, it's this and it's that. It's not one to buy. But for an EV, as a second-hand car, I think that's a challenge, is trying to assess the condition pre-purchase to know if that's going to be good or bad. And I think that's a bit of an opportunity area that I know some manufacturers are exploiting, where you can do an analysis of the EV system before you buy it, or as part of the
I think I've noticed on the radio, I think it's Hyundai or Kia now are pushing their second-hand EV market and offering a certificate and a battery warranty for X amount of years or what have you.
Yeah.
But then when you look at, who was it? I think Matt Cleveley and Kev Pearce have both looked at it. That Tesla Model S that was the taxi, that's done 500,000 mile and it's still like 80% battery life, and it's been supercharged all its life to 100%. Yeah, it's quite amazing, really.
It is, yeah. I don't think they're as frail as people make out, and it's always the fear of the unknown. You know, people years ago used to think if they were going on a train, when trains first came about, once it hit 30 miles an hour, they would suffocate. So there is this, misnomer of the fear of the unknown, and I think EVs drop into that zone that everyone thinks the battery's going to freak out once it's done, 10 years of service and 100,000 miles, which isn't the case. But it's a new technology and sort of unproven. But I think the transition, if the government bring in this diesel particulate counting and we start to see old diesels disappear, it leaves the replacement market. Is that mature enough with enough EVs to get people at a reasonable cost, as you say, Kev, of driving a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old EV? Are they going to be comfortable to do it? It brings that challenge, as you said there, Alec. Where do I live? Have I got a charge point? Can I charge up outside my house if I live in a terraced house? There's lots of issues that block that being a possibility and make it the widespread adoption of EV a bit of a challenge, more so than just even perception, but the physicality of how does this integrate into my life. And the fear of the unknown. EVs are pretty awesome for my particular use case. I drive 12 miles a day and that car needs charging up every 20 days or 30 days. It's a nice way to travel for me, but could I go to Scotland in it tomorrow? Yes, but it would take me a long time and several stops, where in the diesel cars I own, I could do that in maybe 1 or 2 stints. So there's a whole heap of stuff, and I don't think there is no movement for the widespread adoption, or where like the milk marketing board, where's the EV marketing board to reassure everyone that drinking whole milk is good for you? That sort of is a challenge, and it is a big challenge. And I think we're going to see as technicians the market change when the emission bomb drops about particle counters, and we have to be ready. And I'm pretty confident you guys in the room with the training, your outlook and your desire and the businesses you work in are go ahead. But where I probably would fear is, the garages that aren't training, that aren't looking forward, that, aren't engaged or involved. There's going to be some shock in that next particular phase of emission controls.
I think there's, obviously we know a lot of guys in the garage, and not a lot of the new young guys in the garage industry, and also a lot of the older guys in the garage industry. And I think quite a lot of a bit older than me guys, a lot of them have said, I'm not that worried about it because it's not going to happen in my lifetime. In the next 15, 20 years or what have you, which I think it will. I think it's going to be next 10 years.
I think
10, 15 years.
It's coming a lot quicker than a lot of people realise.
Yeah.
I think I've said it once already, but it's a hugely interesting time. Like you say, even with the second-hand EV and hybrid market, no one knows. Like like you said, if someone comes to me, like loads of people say, "Oh, I'm thinking about buying this car. What do you think of this, Steve?" And I'm like, "Yeah, no, that's a good one. Yeah, I think you'd be fine with that." But like you say, yeah, EV and hybrid, I'd be like, I haven't really got any information to back up anything I might be able to tell you on that. So
it's still quite an unknown, really.
Huge question mark. And I think, like what you were saying there about other garages, if you're not ready for it, if you're not kind of thinking, should we go on a EV level 3 and level 4 and really just start learning about it and doing a bit more research about it, if you're not ready for that, it's going to wean out a lot of independent garages. There's going to be a lot of independent garages that just, like you say, I've been thinking about quite a bit about the diesel thing and EV hybrid, and you're kind of thinking there's going to be a lot of garages out there all of a sudden overnight are just going to be like
scrabbling for work.
What are we going to do
they
here?
won't be able to facilitate it either.
Yeah. I think you've got to be, at the minute, you've got to be really proactive about, being ready for what's going to come. Otherwise, I'm not really sure how you're going to continue. You do your fast fit in your tyres, and that will kind of see you by for a bit. But if you were a kind of garage that was doing 4 injectors and a diesel pump on whatever, and you were getting some good income from a lot of diesel jobs, I think you're gonna really have a bit of a shock of what's around the corner.
I think some people are quite ignorant as well as to what could be coming, because maybe they're just scared and they don't know what to do about it. Whereas if you can try and keep an open mind about what is going to come, you can try and prepare yourself.
Yeah. And full circle back to what we were saying with apprentices, it's kind of, we're probably the guys sitting here that have always kind of said, right, I want to keep learning about that. I want to keep up my skills and, keep being on the forefront of it all. And the guys that maybe aren't quite that way in mind are going to...
I think we could probably say this a lot of it. We can say the same partly with what's coming with EV and hybrid as what actually came along with diesel after the last scrappage scheme, because there wasn't so many diesels about, and a lot of them, sort of were EDC 15s and EDC 16 was coming along and such like, and a lot of people didn't really know too much about it, and diesels were just fleet cars, even though it wasn't that long ago. And then all of a sudden scrappage came out and everybody changed. And we all had to learn about them. And this common rail thing that can cut your hand off of
I think
pipes and that sort
I was
of
watching
thing.
something. I think I was watching something Le Mans wise, and what was it? The Audi. Is it the Audi Le Mans car,
Yeah, the
TDI?
diesel
I think
one.
when first won it in 2005. I was like looking at it, and it kind of like sparked something with me. That I was thinking, remember when that happened? We were all like, a diesel car won Le Mans. Like that was absolutely groundbreaking.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like thinking in my head, well, if I use that same mindset around now, it's going to be kind of, there's going to be, I know we see a lot of EV, we've got the EV race series, and, I think one of the EVs did really well at Paris-Dakar, didn't they, this year and stuff. So you're kind of thinking, well...
But can you remember when Conrail first came out?
Yeah.
I was in a Ford dealership, and the first we had the 1800 diesel Mondeo, and you could tell the difference between the bloody common rail ones and the normal pump. We'd gone on common rail ones, bloody hell, that's a diesel. That goes like hell.
And it was quieter.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about Le Mans as well. I mean, just racing as well. I mean, they're always being quite good at the forefront of innovation when they're talking about cars. I mean, we've got new fuel as well that they're testing and trying, aren't they? That whether or not it'll ever make it to commercial market, I don't know.
Synthetic fuels, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know too much about it, but I've heard about it. So
I think there's another challenge as well that I don't know if it's as well known as across the industry, because I get about a little bit. I'm starting to see, unfortunately, some of the garages that have been there for years, 50, 60 years, there's no sort of natural takeover of that garage, and that garage then gets sold.
Knocked down, built houses built on it. Yeah.
So there's also then that natural decrease of independent garages going.
Yeah.
That's going to add to the issue of, we've got a skills gap, we've now got a garage gap probably developing, and we've got a big emergence in different technologies.
Yeah, you could, it was often mooted that, jokingly, that the widespread adoption of EVs would solve the technician crisis through the lack of work. because the work that's required for an EV is much lower than that for diesel and petrol. Got no oil filter, no air filters. You got no injectors, no DPFs, no turbochargers. Only all of that stuff, sort of dual mass clutch and flywheel, disappears. And if you go widespread adoption of EV, there's definitely going to be less work. But I think that in itself is a truism. And what that should do is put pressure on garages to be at the forefront of adopting the new way, because there's going to be a bit of a scramble if we do get this emission control that says that your DPF deleted car will fail the MOT, and all of a sudden that's going to cause a pretty widespread change. I think I'm hard pushed to be convinced that that's not going to happen. But you're right, garages are being closed down and sold. I think the choice of garage for people is maybe what's changed, is that they don't have a widespread choice now, and you're finding people are maybe more respectful of the relationship they have with their car repairer. They appreciate the work that they do because they know the choice of garages, the older garages are disappearing. But equally, you could say that presents an opportunity for people in the trade to set their own garage up. There's probably not a better time. Stephen, you've been in that. You're in that zone recently. That and Alec too. Setting up a garage is a great opportunity if you're skilled and got that mindset and opportunity to take advantage of the changes. As a business, it's pretty strong. People, I always think back to the financial crisis where people were selling their houses because they could sleep in their car, but they couldn't drive the house to work. So I'm in financial dire straits. What will I do? Keep the car. Got to keep the car because that gets me to work, keeps me earning. The house will have to go. It's crazy thinking about that advantage of transportation that people have got. Cool stuff. Listen, chaps, we've been talking for a good while now. So yeah. Oh, yeah. So hybrid. Yeah. For Rob just passed me a note. Thanks, Rob. 2024 Le Mans winner was a hybrid. Yeah. Ferrari LP499. So your prediction of 2004 with the diesel, there we are 20 years later. We've got a hybrid winning, and I really believe hybridization is going to be where we're going to spend the next.
Yeah, I think so as well.
Definitely,
Yeah, but thanks for that, Rob. Good note. We've been chatting away now, guys, for quite a while. As is traditional, I'm going to draw the event to a close, and I'm going to talk to our audience and ask them about their magic wishes. I'm going to go around the table and think about if you had a wish to change either something in the industry or about the way that you do your work. What is your Harmonic Motion podcast wish with the swoop of a wand to change things in the industry? So, Ken, I'll follow convention. Keith, I'll come to you first.
Oh, well, that's a question, isn't it? What would I change? Very little, other than I think the college thing would be what I change at the moment.
Yeah, give it a bit
and
of a shake.
I don't want to sound like a miserable bugger, even though I am, but to, I don't know, take it back to the YTS as it was. I know everyone hated it at the time, but it worked, and it worked for a lot of people, not just for me, but yeah, and any young ones that are listening, it is a really good trade. It is a really rewarding trade, and it's really enjoyable. And if you are just starting out in it, really stick at it and be the best you can at it, really.
Yeah. Sage
train.
And train, yeah. Keep continually training. You'll never be fully trained, as Stephen alluded to. No, that's ideal. Yeah. So maybe a review and a shake-up of the way college or the apprenticeship is organised. I agree. That's an awesome wish. Kev?
I'd probably go for proper licensing for garages and technicians, just because we have got some rot in this industry that needs to go.
Yeah.
Just to get rid of that rot and make sure everyone doing it is doing it the best of their abilities. To
a standard, yeah. There's a lot to be said for licensing in terms of clearing out. It always seems to be whenever you talk to any of the higher ups, there seems to be a lack of desire on whichever current government are in place. The problems that they've got generally are much worse than the mess in the motor trade, and you generally get that they're not remotely interested. We have to give the hats off to the IMI who you know, for better or for worse, have organised at least a body of people that are trained. The professional register sees good garages, you know, getting trained and passing the assessments, sitting on a register, and that really was the beginning of giving the government an option. Because one of the problems was, if you said tomorrow you can't take your car, but only to an approved garage that's got licence, the issue it caused with transports, you know, overnight caused a problem. So the IMI have kind of given the government no excuse in that way. If you're on the professional register and you're doing a good job, if they were to switch it over, it being part of that scheme has to be a thumbs up. That will encourage the government to see licensing, whether we agree with it or not. I think, you know, you'd have to be hard pushed to say it wouldn't lift the standard. So
I think it lifts standards massively.
yeah, it's a good wish. Yeah, really quite cool. Thanks, Kev. Sam, what do you think? Wishes?
Wishes. I think I wish that this trade would talk more with each other about problems that we are encountering going forward. So I've always had, there's a quote out there, I can't remember whose quote it was, but it was always assuming the person you're talking to knows more than you do. And I think if everybody had that kind of same mindset, it would kind of glue us together. We'd all be able to have conversations and open conversations like this that are really beneficial, and I've really enjoyed myself. And I think it's important to see everybody else's point of view. You can gather that kind of information. Like we said, we can go to the colleges with that information. We can go back to our customers with that information. We can go to our employer, our fellow staff, talk to them about this. So I think just collectively it'd be good to talk more with each other about what's kind of going on within our industry.
Yeah, no, awesome. And obviously that's one of the underlying things behind us putting together the pod chat, in a way of having these conversations that hope they get out to other people and change perspectives, or show a different light, maybe show what's going on and people's thoughts. So yeah, the communication is a big thing, I think, in getting some level of consensus, really, that in the trade there's a lot of, you know, we won't work for that garage, or we think they're rubbish, or, you know, there's competition when there should be probably more harmony. We've got more to gain by working together than we have working against each other. So yeah, no, really good communication's an awesome one. Yeah, brilliant. Alec?
I think if I had a magic wand and would like to make a wish, it would be an appreciation of the industry as a whole. I think it should be that the customers, I feel that they should appreciate the skill of the technicians that are working on their vehicles, pay the worth of that technician. The garages to be more confident in sort of exploring their profit margins and look to up their labour rates, so that they can pay the techs the ways that they should deserve. And as a whole, try and sort of bring it more in line, the industry more in line with your electricians out there, your plumbers. You know, a £200 call out fee for a plumber to come look at your boiler. If I said that to a customer, they'd run a mile. You know, so there needs to be that appreciation. I wish that would, you know, hopefully start to come through soon.
Yeah, I think, again, scarcity of garages and good technicians is seeing that, and you know, the upward pressure on wages because of the inaccessibility of technicians. It's becoming more reasonable. I think the bottom feeders and the guys like Kev, you were saying about that aren't doing it correctly are kind of dragging the trade down to the lowest possible common denominator by charging 35 quid for a plug-in and this kind of thing. I think with the shortage of garage technicians and garages having to charge more because having to pay more is giving that upward lift. But I would say just be confident and charge what you need to charge, because, you know, we're often too quick to think about price as the only differentiating thing, and we're not keen as technicians to challenge that price value comparison. And we think if the customer sucks on their teeth a bit and says, "Oh, how much?" that's actually a complaint. And it's about being confident in what the service you're offering and realise that you are special at what you do and your charges are worth it. And actually, the clients that aren't willing to pay that aren't probably your customer in the first place, and you have to quiz about then, are you doing a great job with marketing? Do the clients know the kind of work that you do, and are you selecting those to have that work? And you might say, you know, if you're having 2 or 3 clients that are happy to pay your bill rather than fighting for 20 or 30 clients that aren't dragging you down, would you be better off being a richer, less busy fool?
Yeah.
Or are you better off chasing everyone and keeping everyone happy and being too mad and not really being able to cope with the workload? There is a bit of an exclusivity thing about the price you charge. You don't necessarily need to be the cheapest, and if you're good, have the confidence to do that. But I think technology's dragging the perception positively as well. So I think we're in a good position. I think your wish is probably, close to becoming reality. So, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. Good stuff. And Stephen?
I mean, literally what you two have just said then, and what perception was going to be exactly what I said about, and what your final words there are pretty much what my words were going to be as regards, just that kind of, dirty backstreet garage where you would pay, I don't know, whatever cheap prices, £30 an hour or whatever, that they're just dragging the industry down. And it's just that perception of, I think we are getting there. I think, like you just said, I really believe, and certainly in my experience, customers more and more are really kind of starting to give us that respect. Maybe it's the kind of jobs that I'm getting in or whatever, but I do seem to just see a bit of a change in the customers where they are kind of like, well, I know this is good. It sounds like it's going to be a bit of a tough one for you. I'm sorry, for bringing my car in, and if that can continue, and a bit from what Sam said as well, that communication, I chat to a lot of other guys at other garages, and we chat a lot, and it's kind of just building that perception from our point of view, and really bringing the industry up rather than dragging it down by kind of, oh yeah, no worries, mate, I'll do that cheap for you, like you say, those cheap plugins and stuff like that. And I think customers are probably having these cheap plugins, and they're not getting fixed from it, are they? They're having their cheap plug-in, and then they're kind of like, oh God, now I'm going to have to take it to Steve or Alec or Sam or whoever, and they're kind of like, now I've got to pay, some proper money and get the job properly done. And they've, I think a lot of people have probably learnt their lesson, and maybe we are hopefully getting somewhere with it.
Well, not just proper money. Now they've got to pay again.
Well, yeah, that's it. Yeah,
proper money. And I think some of that comes down to your people's awareness of your business and your ethics and your ethos, and the fact that you are a professional. You'll start to attract those positive clients, and I think that's where garages, I suppose, in a way, often struggle, that they're not proactively marketing the positive aspect of the get it right first time, fully invested in future technology, having the resources and equipments, having a nice environment for people to come with their cars. That package deal is often that you underestimate your own service, and you don't feel confident to charge in that. I think if my magic wish was, it was about self-confidence and introspection from garage owners and technicians about your value in being confident to push the boundaries of charging, and push the boundaries of price cost, and push the boundaries of profitability and internal investment, so you are prospering, and we're making a very good living at keeping the country's transport going. Guys, that was fantastic. A very good, thoughtful and in-depth conversation. So thanks all for your contribution.
Thank you very much.
The swear jar remained distinctly empty, so I thank you for your word selection and politeness in that. And look forward to tomorrow's day. We're going to get deep into the ADAS calibration using the newfangled robot stuff. So that'll be a good and interesting day. So I appreciate you giving up your time and staying on late.
Pleasure.
It's been quite a long day, but thanks ever so much for your contribution. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
Cheers.